Do you want to create content, but you don't have a big, huge office space? Are you working in a living room, a spare bedroom? In this video, I'm going to show you how to create content with one camera and one microphone and have your content look amazing. All right, let's get started. So before we get started, here are the tools that we're going to need. We're going to need a camera that has HDMI out, a microphone that has USB-C functionality, and lighting, and a few cables like a USB-C cable, HDMI cable, and I'll list everything in the description down below in case you get confused. And I'll also explain what these cables are and how to use them. All right, so let's get started with cameras. So as far as cameras, I honestly prefer that you get a mirrorless camera. And you can use a DSLR camera like the Nikon D750 or the Nikon D3200s or D3100s. They work because they have HDMI out, which is great. But the issue is that mirrorless cameras allow you to have the camera record for long periods of time with no recording limit. But these DSLR cameras, like the Nikons, they shut off after 24 minutes or after a while with having the shutter open. So I don't necessarily recommend you use these. But if you're recording in short bursts, like 10, 15 minutes, these are great. So if you want to use this, just know that you can't do a 1 hour live stream. You'll be in the middle of saying something profound and amazing and your camera shut off.
He just left.
It's not really professional, and it's going to honestly hold you back and be extremely annoying. I'm speaking from experience, so I'm going to save y'all that headache. That's why I prefer you get a mirrorless camera like the ZV-1F, the ZV-E10, the Sony A7C, the Sony A7 Mark II.
That sounds made up.
Those are some really good cameras that you can just plug in the HDMI and then start recording indefinitely without worrying about your camera shutting off. Only time it'll shut off is if the battery dies, which is great. So mirrorless cameras are fantastic for this setup. So as far as microphones, any microphone would work. But the reason why I said a USB-C microphone is because these microphones allow you to connect to any computer and be ready to go. So this is supposed to be a fun and easy setup that you can set up anywhere without having to worry about anything. And the Fifine Tank 3 is a great addition to any setup and any place because it has XLR and USB functionality. So this is great. And it has a headphone jack. So if you're just doing a live stream, if you're doing a Zoom call, if you're doing any type of content creation, this is a great tool for that. So I added that to the setup. Now let's talk about the CamLink 4K. This device allows you to connect your camera's HDMI signal. So this is connected to our camera and the other end will connect to the CamLink 4K. This will allow us to connect it to our computer. So if you have a computer or a laptop that has USB-C and not USB-A, you can get a dongle. A dongle would work. But right now I'm going to connect it to the back of my iMac, which is back there. And that iMac is from 2012. So you're going to see some great things here. Remember, we're dealing with a small limited space, which is why I'm using the Elgato Mic Arm to hold up my camera. I'm not using a heavy tripod, which is going to take up a lot of room. Remember that we're dealing with a small limited space. So we want to make sure we don't take up as much space as possible. So which is why I'm using the Elgato Mic Arm to hold up my camera. Now, as far as lighting, I'm using an Elgato key light and it's sitting directly above me. I have it mounted onto the desk and it's right behind my iMac. And the Elgato key light is great because it's a bright light, but it's also soft. So another thing about lighting is that, yes, lighting is great. You need lighting. You have to be able to see yourself, but we need to talk about diffusing your light. The Elgato key light is a bright light and it's a soft light. If you don't have an Elgato key light, you can just take any video light and just put some diffusion over it. You can use a softbox, a lantern, or just a sheet, and it'll work just the same. You want to make sure that you are diffusing the light so you can get that nice, soft look. Before we get to the next segment, I want to also talk about the importance of lighting and the position of your light. So you do not want to light directly in front of your face, like this right here. This is super bright. But notice as we move it further away, the light does get softer. And there's this whole rule called the inverse square law, how the further the light is away from the subject, me, the light power diminishes. So as you can tell, I think this is probably a pretty good distance for this light. And that's another thing you'll be able to test. So don't just get a light and just put it smack daddy in front of your face. Make sure that it is at a good distance to where it's illuminating you, but is also soft. And I'm going to show you how this looks with diffusion. So any white cloth that's like transparent will be able to work. This could work just fine. So this is our light shining here, and watch what happens when it goes over here. It's super nice and diffuse. So up front of me, that's pretty good. And this looks pretty great if this was a super bright light source. So diffuse your light and have it placed in a nice position further away from you to where it's not so harsh, smack daddy bright and harsh in your face. So yeah. So that was a quick little lesson on lighting. Let me know if y'all want me to do a deeper dive video on that. All right. Let me know in the comments down below, but let's continue with the video. I'm not just using one light. I'm also using a light behind me. I'm using another Elgato key light, and that's just to add some character to the background. And I'm also using another light in the room. So lighting is super important. For this setup, I think I'm using maybe like 4 lights. You don't need to have all 4 of these lights on. So you can pretty much get away with just one light if you wanted to, but more light, the better, because depending on your camera sensor, it probably does really bad in low light. So if you only can use one light, just make sure that that light is bright enough and soft on your face. All right, let's get into the setup and see how it looks and sounds. So let's get a little deeper into the setup. As you can see, we're using a camera. The lens that I'm using on the camera is a 20mm f1.8. That's how I'm getting that blurry background and that wide angle look, which I really like. And the microphone, again, is the Fifine mic. It's plugged in via USB into my computer here. And the way that the camera is connecting to the computer is through that CamLink 4K, that video capture card that I showed y'all earlier. It plugs directly into the back of the computer. And the lighting, I'm using the Elgato key light, and it's directly in front of me. So it's giving me that nice, soft look. So now that we have everything connected to our computer, we're going to log on to Riverside. Riverside is going to allow us to connect our microphone, our camera, and our computers together. So that way we can edit our podcast. We can create clips from our podcast. We can add captions to our podcast. We can do so many different cool things with Riverside. So to get everything started, log on to your Riverside account and then click New. Once you're there, you want to name the recording. Let's name it something like testing. Once you've named it, you want to click Record. Now you're greeted with this screen. Our CamLink is already selected for a camera. We have to select our microphone. So find the Fifine mic or whatever USB mic that you're using, and you're good to go. One last thing. We have to let Riverside know if we're wearing headphones or not. I'm currently not wearing headphones. And after that, you just click Join Studio and you're good to go. So this is the Riverside Studio. This is where all our recordings go, live streams, podcasts, any recordings. So we're going to click on this video here and we'll click it. And now we have some really dope options that we can do. We can do magic clips. Riverside will literally generate clips from this 8-minute video. We can do full episode. It'll render out the episode, or we can just edit from scratch. If we just want to edit the video ourselves, we can do that. Let's go to magic clips. Let's see what happens when we click magic clip. So right now we're in the magic clip option. We could set our duration to 30 to 60 seconds, a minute. Let's pick 30 to 60 seconds. Let's see how that looks. And let's say if I had multiple people on this podcast, it'll find those people. And I'll just say, let's just say focus on Gil. I mean, it's only me. It's auto. So it's only one person. So this section right here is pretty dope. Topics to highlight. During a whole podcast, sometimes the conversation could go left. It could go right. And you might end up talking about Pokemon cards. So it's really cool that Riverside gives you the ability to highlight those topics and make clips out of them. It's pretty dope. So let's click generate clips. All right, I think it's done. And we can see in the text what Riverside decided to edit. We can even add captions. And the iMac, the computer itself, something that has been here since 2012. I think that's pretty dope. Let's click export and see what happens. Oh, we can even do some cool things like video quality. Let's export in 4K, normalize audio, remove background noise. That's pretty dope. That's pretty cool. Let's click export video. Go to exports. And the iMac, the computer itself, something that has been here since 2012 and is still kicking. And I wanted to illustrate this because this is how powerful Riverside is. Riverside allows you to have the computer not do all of the heavy lifting, which is really powerful because now this old computer, which has just been sitting here being a background computer, I don't necessarily use it a lot. Now I'm actually using it to actually produce a podcast. I think that's pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really happy with that. If you thought this was dope and you want to check out Riverside for yourself, use code GIL at checkout to save 15%. Hopefully you got something out of this video. If you did, comment down below, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.